was, if you can feel your own wounds, then you will not wound your own children.
We have kind of a superpower, men do, which is to ignore the wound and just grit through it, right? And that's necessary, right? You're in the foxhole, and you actually, this is a story that you specifically talk about in the book. You're in the foxhole, and people are getting shot all around you, and you have, I mean, that's horrific, but you have to shut it out, and you have to do the job. Welcome back to Raising Men. In our last conversation with world-renowned psychologist Steve Biddulph, we explored why boys are falling behind in a system that often misunderstands their biology. But today, we're going to go deeper into the subject of masculinity itself. We're going to shift the lens from the son to the father. Steve's seminal work, The New Manhood, has reached millions because it addresses the quiet crisis that inside men themselves, the legacy of the father wound and the struggle for authentic male friendship and the search for purpose. Steve, welcome back to Raising Men.
Hi, Shaun. Great to be with you, and hello to everyone who's watching or listening, and especially if young guys, teenagers even, or guys in their 20s are listening to today. A special welcome to you. We really want to give you some things so that your generation can be a better generation of men, and so you're especially welcome. But Shaun, thanks so much for talking to me again on your show. Thank you.
Absolutely, I am so excited to dive into this material and really outline the potential for a healthy, productive, and joyful form of masculinity. Now, you start off the book with a message of hope and change. Now, when this was written, it must have seemed that we've really turned a corner in that respect. But in the last almost decade, do you think things have gotten better or have they gotten worse?
Oh, it's like, I have to use a metaphor, Shaun.
I love metaphors. You know me. I love metaphors.
Yeah, because it's both. It's getting better and worse. I'm a kayaker, and my most fun thing to do day to day is to go out on the river with my kayak. And anyone who does canoeing or anything who's watching, there's a time when you're just at the mouth of a river where it goes into the sea, where the tide is coming in, but it's also going out. And it's very tricky because there's currents running both ways.
Yeah.
And you have to really watch out that you don't get drowned. And I think that's what we're living in now.
That's a perfect metaphor.
It works really for me, because there's no doubt we're living in a terrible, terrible time. People being murdered in the streets by our own government, and all kinds of crises coming to a head. But there's these wonderful people standing up to that. And if we're talking about guys, there are guys who are, looking out for their neighbors and protecting people, delivering food to people who can't come out of their houses. And so it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. And so that's why I'm really happy to talk to you, Shaun, because I think if we can just turn up the dial on healthy masculinity, we can turn the tide and get this rush of confidence into the good men, so that they stand up and drive the bad men, out of the house.
The bad men tend to be more noisy, don't they? And they tend to kind of suck the air out of the room. But the good men have a choice whether to let that happen or not.
Yeah. And I think what we're talking about today is how we fix ourselves, so that we can do that. And
you have this amazing metaphor in the beginning of the book that really spoke to me, and it was this notion of manhood and masculinity as a river. Tell us tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Well, it's a it's a little bit like we talked about in the earlier podcast that we did, that um we're not like birds that, a bird is born and it knows to fly south in the winter, and it
Yeah.
knows to build a nest, and human beings are v- programmed for flexibility. So we can live in a cave, or we can live in a moon ship, um, rocket ship, and we have to be flexible. And so the way we're designed is everything we have was learned. We've got these primary things, but then everything else is learned on top.
Yeah.
And so in order to be a good man, you have to be around good men and see them in a deep, exposed way. And what happened in our culture was that for thousands of years, boys and men were together all the time. And so we lived in small groups, and we spent the whole day walking along riverbanks together, and with the men and the women and the kids all together talking and hanging out. And in those days, we used to feed ourselves and clothe ourselves in 2 hours a day.
Mhm.
That's the hunter-gatherer lifestyle was very, very cruisy. And we kind of don't realize that, they were the masters of their world. They gardened the earth. And they did that because of the skills they passed on.
Yeah.
And so some of those skills were gendered, and some of them were just human skills. But a boy growing up would have had hours and hours a day of male teaching. Um, and he stepped into a healthy kind of manhood with very strong ethics about protecting the earth and protecting living things around him, and caring for the women and children. And when the industrial era came along, the men were ripped out from family life, and even from community life. They were down mines in my grandfather's generation, down the mines, digging the coal, working in the factories. They hardly saw their children.
Yeah.
And and so when we say masculinity is a river, it has to flow into you. You've got to receive masculinity, and then you can flow it on to your children. It's not something that's in like some kind of inborn quality.
Yeah.
And so if you know that, it's a relief. The men I work with are just so relieved. I thought there was something missing in me, something deep there that wasn't there. But no, we didn't get the software. And and so that's what we're trying to put back when I wrote Manhood and when I wrote Raising Boys. And here's how I think you do masculinity. And listening to men and talking to men is that's a bit of a um, torrent of words there, Shaun. But is that making sense? Is that adding
Yeah,
up
it
to
makes perfect
something?
sense. And I think
Mm,
that, if you look at that, if you look at the metaphor in that sense, if you look at it that with that metaphor, what you can imagine is, I don't know, going back a ways, the river was healthy for the most part. You were surrounded, a boy was surrounded by good men for the most part.
mm,
And he had a lot of masculinity flowing into him. So he had a lot that could flow out as well. And then that, because of the Industrial Revolution, as you say, that became a trickle. And then that trickle became, I don't know, maybe infected or polluted
or just
by,
cut off altogether. Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
no, that, yeah, it became, yeah, polluted by kind of a very shallow vision of masculinity that we get from
Mm,
movies and
yeah.
television and popular culture, right? And I would argue that was the state of masculinity at the time you wrote the book. And now that trend there was has just gotten worse because of social
Mm,
media. That thing that polluted the pollution has become a morass, a kind of a very toxic morass, really, of the water's not flowing at all anymore. It is just stagnant. and it is unmoving, because now whereas the vision of masculinity that we got from TV and movies was a trickle, now the vision that we get from the social media algorithms and what drives clicks and, what we end up seeing on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or whatever, that is even that's the trickle of a trickle. It is very, very, very shallow. What do you
Yeah.
do you agree?
Yes, I do. But I think I'd like to try and make this relatable for the men watching
Yeah.
in a sort of more concrete way. Now that we've got the picture,
Yes,
um,
definitely.
that what happened was that when the men were pulled out of, the lives of families, um, there's this thing I heard once, and it's something that I put into my live shows when I was doing live talks over the last 30 years. It was one of those things that made the room go absolutely silent. And an audience normally has just a very slight rustling sort of sound to it.
Mhm.
It's interesting. You have 500 people in a room and it kind of rustles just gently. They're paying attention. But then there's this silence that just goes whoomp. And you've hit something that people are diving inside with. And what it was is that every boy that ever lived, every boy ever, has a dream dad inside him. And I see a smile on your face, Shaun, as I say that a boy has, this is what I'd like my dad to be like.
Yeah.
My dream dad would do these kind of things with me and would treat me in this way and would be this kind of man in the world. So they have a dream dad that they hope their real dad will rise to or will measure up to. That makes sense. And
Yeah.
so there's the boy. Now, the next part of it is that every dad, somewhere deep inside, has a dream son.
Hmm.
First that he learns that he's got to have a boy. He can't help it. It doesn't matter how, politically correct or whatever condition on that. Somewhere inside him, this is my son. This is what I want. My son's going to be like this. And you see what we've got there is that there's the boy with the dream dad, and there's the dad with the dream son.
Yeah.
And guess what? In this world, they never ever match. No, if you wanted a NFL footballer and you get a kid who wants to do ballet,
Right.
you wanted um you wanted a fisherman and you get a plumber. You wanted a scientist and you get a kid that just likes to work in the shop. And 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 it's a jarring kind of thing. And and in the old days when we walked along riverbanks all day and we sat around campfires all night, that was okay because you had time to find who your son really was
Mhm.
and to get to know him and get to love him. And because what we would say to the room when I used to talk about this was, it's good for you. It's an absolute nightmare to get your dream, getting your ego fantasy of a kid in a real shape is a disaster,
Yeah.
and because no kid is supposed to be the ego badge to be worn by their parents. That's a
Right.
catastrophic outcome. And we see the results of that in the sporting world and all over the place. That what you got, and I know how heavy this is, that there are people watching, listening who have, intellectually disabled kids and kids who have brain tumors and kids who struggle with are so far from what they expected to have. This is heavy duty stuff. All the same, what you got is better for you than what you would have made up for yourself. And so that's the journey. That's an eternal, a timeless journey of fathers and kids, is meeting them as a person. And when we stopped having, when I wrote Manhood, the average father spent 6 minutes a day talking to his children. The studies on father time, it's a whole field of study that people in universities do, is called father time studies. There's professors in that. 6 minutes a day. And that isn't going to, and what happens if you've only got 6 minutes a day is you don't find each other. It's like the gears in an old manual car. They just jar, dad and son just crunch.
It's like you're not pushing the clutch in. You're just jamming the gear.
No, you just change.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, so that's a big spread there. But this is what went wrong. So Robert Bly put this first in my reading, that it's the father wound that runs through the culture. In the audiences that I used to speak, and I would have 100, 200 men in the room, and I'd ask them, "How do you get along with your dad? You're here because it'd be a day on fatherhood, for guys, whole room full of men. You're here because you want to be a good dad. How do you get along with your own dad?" And it's like I got a hand grenade out of my briefcase, and kind of 30%, Shaun, 30% of the men in the room, and they'd be the first to speak, and they would look really pissed that I'd asked the question. Like, what kind of question is that? 30% of the guys in the room would say, I don't get along with my father. I don't speak to him. I wouldn't waste my time. It's like they kind of spit it out. I wouldn't waste my time with him. And so we put that on the board, 30% estranged from fathers. And another 30 on the board. And that's men who say, I see my dad at the birthdays or Christmas or family events. Okay, that's great. You see him. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
What's it like when you see them? Oh, it's always kind of prickly. You don't get in the door. He says something about your haircut or something, and it's on again. It's on again. And the women roll their eyes, like, oh, it's on again, And so there's a relationship, but it's cactus. It's cactus. I write the word cactus alongside that 30. Prickly. And I write another 30 on the board. And that's guys who are, they go visit their dad in the old people's home once a month.
Mm-hmm.
Or they drive up to San Francisco to see them once a month from San Diego. And they're good sons, they show up. But when they're with them, it's like, oh, geez, I can't wait to get back on the road and get home. It's not nourishing. And I tease the audience. I say it's a D word. It starts with D. What's the word? And they always get it straight away. It's duty.
Duty, yeah. Sure.
We have a relationship, but it's a dutiful relationship. And so I say, now you're doing your arithmetic now. We've got 100%, 30, 30, and 30. What's left?
You got 10 left.
Yeah, that's great. And 10% of guys in your and my, we're two different generations, but so both of our generations, Shaun, only 10% of guys would say, I am close to my dad.
Mhm.
He's the one I talk to when I'm worried. He's the one I go to get, you know, built back up again and to lean on and feel nourished by. And these guys, they're the ones who speak last. And they sort of say, "Look, I've listened to all the other guys. I totally understand where the others are coming from, but I, you know, my old man is amazing. You know, he's just the best dad. You know, I couldn't design a better dad than he is, and I'm going to so miss him when he's gone." And they have tears in their eyes, and and so I'll say to the group, I just want you to look at that, and just notice what's happening in your heart as we've been doing this. This is a disaster that only one man in 10 is close
Mhm.
to his dad. And how can we heal that wound? How can we make sure that this isn't going to be the case with us and our sons um, in 30 years' time? And that sets the tone for a real resolve to father, to be a hands-on, open-hearted dad, and make a different generation. Yeah, yeah.
I can see how that would really motivate people to want to heal that wound. How do you do
Mm.
that? Well, so first of all, what's the nature of the wound? And or is it just different for everybody? Or and then how do you go about
Yeah, well,
healing?
if we take on board that these guys who came back from World War II and came back from Vietnam and Afghanistan and brought so much damage into the picture. And also, for all the many reasons, the economic catastrophes of the 20th century, and unemployment and relocation and shutdown of manufacturing and so on. What
Right.
happened was we had men who really struggled in the fathering role, and there were some very distinctive kinds of ways. For instance, you had the guy who was kind of master of the house,
Mhm.
the kind of father who was like the king, sat in his Jason recliner and it gave orders, and he tended to say things like, you live under my roof. If you live under my roof,
Right. Yeah.
you'll, you'll do what I say. What I say goes. And he got this picture of this like 14-year-old young kid thinking, you know, I can't wait to get my own effing roof.
Right. Yeah.
I just want out of here. Um, and and then there's the dad who's just a carping critic, you know, he might even, I mean, he cares about his kids, but his way of showing it is, no, you're doing that wrong.
Right.
That's you're an idiot, if you don't, and the endless put downs, destroying the kids' self-esteem.
Yeah.
And when young boys just hunger for affirmation of their dad and their uncles and their granddads. So just affirmation is what steps you into wanting to be a better man, um, and want to grow up. Um, but then there's the absent dad, Shaun, as well.
Mhm.
Like 40% in your country and mine.
Yeah.
The marriage didn't work, but the consequence of that was the mum stuck around and the dad cleared out. Um, and and so, or absent through work,
Right.
corporate man who is just physically not there. Comes in at 9 o'clock at night. His eyes are just empty, and and the worst that I come across a lot in my therapy years is a dad who literally who took his own life.
Mhm.
Um, and and we work a lot of this with men's groups because a lot of men consider suicide at some stage, and in my country, 2,500 men kill themselves every year,
Okay.
and my country has only a very small. My country is only about as big as San Francisco in its total population, and so because what a kid decides from that is that they don't decide that my dad had problems. They decide manhood doesn't work.
Yeah.
And on a deeper level, I wasn't worth sticking around for.
Mm-hmm.
And so my dad, I didn't rate enough
Yeah.
that my dad stayed around.
Yeah.
And and for girls' mums mostly stick around, and men kill themselves 4 times more often than women do, and women usually stay with the kids in the family, and
Mm-hmm.
and so girls get usually lots of teaching how to be a woman and to believe in themselves as a woman.
Yeah.
And so the father wound, for people listening, just want to acknowledge that many people listening to this will have, just listening to what I'm talking about, will be feeling a great lot of things shifting in their heart just listening right now. And to put our arms around you and to say we really see you, and we know about what this is like and what a big deal this is. And if you're feeling it, if you're aware of it, then you are on the road to healing. Because the guys that shoot up a shopping center or do harm in any shape or form, they're the ones who have just pushed this right down. They don't feel it. They just like walking logs of wood. But if you're starting to feel the wound, then that wound is getting better. It's like a deer in the forest. When a deer's wounded, it doesn't tough it out. A deer goes to the shadiest, coolest, dampest place in the forest, and it licks the wound. And it waits. And it waits for the wound to heal. And in human beings, we share and we stand with each other through that time. And in the men's groups that started from the Manhood book, that's what would happen. The men would share their wounds and honor those wounds and the depth of those wounds,
Mm-hmm.
and begin to heal. And what we say, because fatherhood was my main focus, was if you can feel your own wounds, then you will not wound your own children.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Shaun?
Yeah, totally it does.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that we have kind of a superpower, men do, which is to ignore the wound and just grit through it, right? And
Mm.
that's necessary, right? You're in the foxhole, and you actually, this is a story that you specifically talk about in the book. You're in the foxhole, and people are getting shot all around you, and that's horrific, but you have to shut it out and you have to do the job. And that's part of being a man too. And
Yeah.
then, but you also need to be able to process it. And you talk about how it gets kind of lodged in your limbic system. And then you've got to work it through eventually. And if you don't, then it's going to erupt in a really bad way. And you're going to take it out on your kids, and you're going to take it out on your wife. You're going to take it out on the rest of your society, and you're not going to fully realize your potential as a man.
No, that's right. And I read a story last year. There's a book called "What It's Like to Go to War," and by an American soldier officer called Malantes, Richard Malantes, and this story really stayed with me. And what it was that there's a lieutenant in Vietnam, and they just finished a firefight with Vietnamese soldiers, and they'd driven off, and there'd been a lot of shooting and bloodshed, but now they were just time to clean up and be finishing up and make things safe. And he was walking around making sure his men were okay and looking out of he was in charge of 200-300 guys in this scene. And he went around a corner into a clearing, and there was something going on that suddenly he just had this, like, a bit of a chill about what was going on. And most of his men were like 19-year-olds. They were conscripts. He was a regular soldier, but these were drafted soldiers.
Yeah.
And the energy didn't feel right. And as he got closer, he saw what had happened was there was the bodies of some dead Vietnamese soldiers, Viet Cong, on the ground, killed in the fight. And these young guys had their bayonets out, and they were hacking off the ears of the dead people and sticking them in the mesh on their helmets and joking and throw them around, and really, grotesque situation, kind of, and laughing kind of hysterically and joking around, and he completely lost it with them, and he yelled at them, and he said, I've got you guys, the 6 of you. You're going to bury these bodies. These are human beings who gave their lives for something they believed in. They deserve better treatment than this. You bury them properly in the ground, and you don't leave here till you've done it. And he stormed off because he was just had to calm down himself. But when he came back, Shaun, about 20 minutes later, they're just about finished, but some of them still doing the burying. He went closer to their faces. The young guys were weeping. They were sobbing with tears because now they were putting human bodies in graves that they had killed and that they'd previously, what had happened, and it's a very male thing, the kind of, as a little pack of 19-year-olds, the way that they were dealing with the horror, it's not that they were indifferent to it, but the way they were dealing with it was by mucking around, joking around, doing stupid things, cutting ears off people. And now that was a mask that those young men, but that's the mask that young men do when they carry out rapes and when they carry out some of the atrocities that are happening in Gaza, for example, with the IDF Israeli forces that we're reading about. This kind of nightmare hysteria of killing that happens, where it just becomes inhuman.
Yeah, we're going the other direction on October 7th. Same thing.
Yeah, well, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Yes, unleashing this violence.
Yeah.
And so what I would suggest to you and to people listening is that those young men, as they were weeping, they were traveling from boyhood to manhood.
Yeah.
Because a man knows how to weep, and a man knows the gravity of life and death, and feels the wound of just being alive in this world, even in a beautiful, peaceful time, hunting animals to eat. That's part of sustaining life, is to do that. And deer hunting is big here where I live in Tasmania, and I eat deer meat all the time. It's ecological and it's healthy, and a beautiful animal dies for that, and that's part of the sorrow and the richness of life. And not to don't do it, but be mindful of that, that make your life worth what has been given for your life. And so turning from boys to men is what we've got to do. The world is full of big bodies with tiny little boys in them. And lightening up a bit, Shaun, as psychologists, I was trained to notice that not the age a person is, but the age they got stuck. And so we had a prime minister in Australia called John Howard, who I really didn't like, and I worked a lot to end his time as a prime minister. And he was an 8-year-old, and everything you could look at him, he was stuck at 8, and so it was look at me. Nixon would have been the closest of your presidents.
Okay,
to that 8-year-old boy.
Yeah.
We've got a great prime minister now. He's probably made it to 14.
I think there's something about people who rise to leadership in a lot of our Western democracies.
That's good.
That
that's good. And but I can walk down the street and tick them off. 2-year-old, 9-year-old. um,
Yeah.
and because that's when they got stuck. And so pretty important that we start moving everyone. We need more adults. We need adults in the room. And we can talk later about what's involved with that, Shaun. It's only 8 o'clock in the morning here in Tasmania, and I can tell I'm a bit excitable by all this. So I'll just calm myself down a little bit, and we'll keep going.
No, it's perfect. I love this. That that scene that you described in the story, what it's like to go to war, it that was an initiation for those boys, right?
Yeah,
And we've I've done a lot of talking with a number of different people about how we've lost initiation rites and how important they are, and that sort of thing. And it really is a tremendously important thing to graduate from being a boy into being a man and to mark that somehow. And we have an opportunity to be really intentional about how we do that. But the institutions aren't coming to save us on that. Can you tell me a little bit more about the importance of that initiation process of moving to a boy to a man?
yes, and um, perhaps the best thing, and e- I feel like we're in a tree that has so many branches, Shaun, and we should explore
We
all of
should.
those. We'll do some more of these if you
Absolutely.
feel it. But in the initiation process, there was a Franciscan monk called Richard Rohr, spelled Rohr, Rohr, and he did some stunning writing on this stuff, and he tried to pin down, because what we know about initiation, which was that every culture in the world ever had rites of passage for the young man. It was seen as a serious preoccupation to take all that energy and that fierce energy that we have as men, which is harnessed, is just the best thing. It's what men bring to the world. Is this, how come, I really want to cure multiple sclerosis. I really want to build that bridge. I really want to, even if it's just put a playground in the primary school so the kids could got something to do. That's that kind of energy. And
Yeah.
but in boy psychology, it's all about, aren't I wonderful? Aren't I important? Look at me. It's me, 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 which is really, it's great in an 8-year-old. But it's really ugly in a 20-year-old.
Mhm.
And it's beyond belief in a 77-year-old. And
Yeah.
so Raw said, okay, when they initiated the young men, it wasn't about the external things, about putting cuts in your body and scarring and sitting on mountaintops and killing lions and things like that. That was the outer journey.
Mhm.
But what were the inner truths? What were the things that were whispered to the young men and transmitted to them through stories and everything else? And he had 5, but there's just 3 that I think really matter and that would fit today. First one, you're going to die. This is the first truth. You're not immortal. A teenage boy, and the reason teenage boys get killed in car smashes all the time is they have this feeling of immortality. And I have a friend who's a policeman, and he did this thing when his son turned 18 and got his driver's license. He said, son, there's a thing I'd like to do with you, and you don't have to do it. And if you choose not to, I'll respect that. But what I'd like to do is take you down to the morgue and show you what dead looks like. Just show you a body in the morgue. And it's just this thought that I have, because I'm a policeman and I see this, and I'd like you to have this thing that you understand. And the boy thought about it. He said, take a couple of days to think about it. And the son, it's the last thing I want to do in the world is see a dead body.
Yeah.
But Dad, it matters to Dad, and I love my dad, and he's not he's coming from somewhere that seems to be good. And so that they did. They went to the morgue and they rolled out those long drawers, and there was just someone in there, and it wasn't a gruesome or a terrible, scenario, because people watching or listening to this, some of you have seen someone dead in front of your eyes, and some of you haven't. And some of you will have been with a parent or someone when they died.
Mm-hmm.
And that changes you.
Yeah, it does.
And it changes you in a really good way, because you know, this kind of shocking thing to us that you can be alive and full of dreams and memories and everything else, and then you're not. And you're just something cold and dead. And life is incredibly precious and not very long. And death can come at any time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you know that in your bones, you don't waste time playing computer games in your basement, all day. You don't, get all shy and not go up to the girl you like and talk to her. You take your heart in your hands and you go say, I'd like to have coffee with you,
Yeah.
because because I'm going to die one day, and I'm going to grab this life. And so that's the first one. The second one, and we won't take too long. I'm always conscious of Shaun talking too much.
No, this is great.
All right. The second one is your life is not about you. And because when you're a boy, it's what can I show off, or what can I experience, or what can I win or get for myself. And what you find out from bitter experience is, a new car or a new house, a sexual conquest, if that's what you're, how you see sexuality and conquests, makes you happy for about an hour. And then you feel kind of empty and like, got to get another one, I suppose,
Yeah.
But if your life is not about you, then what is it about? Well, maybe, how does this sound? That we're in this world, and I was taught this by an Indigenous elder in Australia, my teacher. We're here for each other. We're in this world for each other. And the joy, and it's real joy, it's lasting joy, it's joy that I'm having just talking to you and to your listeners right now, is when we at least trying to be of help to other people.
Yeah.
And seeing putting a smile on when your wife has a smile on her face, and you put that there. Today, right this time, that smile's because of you. Mm-hmm. And your kids are laughing and playing, and that part of that is that you worked really hard, that they're safe and that they've got a roof over their heads, and they're not scared of you, and they live in a house where kids can laugh and make a noise, and which many people didn't have when they were growing up. And so that's two. You're going to die. Your life is not about you. Third one is you can't control anything. Certainly you can't control the outcomes of your life. Now, I'm a psychologist. We work with people to get better control of their lives. You understand the paradox of this, Shaun.
Right.
If you do this will happen, and this and that'll happen. That you can maximize your the good choices in your life. And it still can go awful. Your partner can die, your house can burn down, it can turn in a moment. And so you can either panic about that, or you can just say, well, who knows what's going to happen? And I can't control it. And somehow, on some level, you relax into the arms of the universe and let it carry you, and let grace carry you. and in an odd kind of way, it goes better. And the guys that make a huge hash of their family and a huge hash of their career even, are the ones who thought, I know I'm going to control it all. And I'm going to have I have to be on top of every little, because it's not how it works. Everything's a dance. You dance with your marriage and you dance with your children, and dancing is not about control. It's about, they want to go this way, and can I handle that? And,
Yeah.
this has happened. What do you know? I just lost my job after 20 years. Okay. How do I dance with that?
Yeah.
And let go of the illusion of individual power. And then you step into the community of men. You see, initiation is not just booting you out of childhood. It's saying, welcome. This is what I just want to say to everyone who's watching or listening. There's a community of good men in this world. We're trying to make things better. We want you and we need you, and your efforts and your energy and your talents. And in exchange, we will nurture you. We'll write the books for you. We'll do the podcasts, and we'll run the men's groups, and it's not about make it on your own. We welcome you. We cherish you, and come on over to the purpose of building a better world.
Yeah.
I
There's
always noticed.
this tremendous, so there's this real, you brought it up, there's this tension, right? Between controlling what you can control and recognizing that the vast majority of things are outside your control and you really need to let them go. It's like you're bowling, and when you set up to bowl, you're going to pick the appropriate ball. You're going to be wearing the right shoes. You're going to have practiced a bunch. You're going to be standing in the right area. And then you're going to approach the lane, and then you're going to release the ball. And you're going to really, really focus hard on all of the things up to the point that you release the ball. And then once you release the ball, it's in God's hand or whatever.
That's right.
And
That's right.
there is no sense even wasting a single shred of any emotional energy on what that ball does, because you can't control it. It's all been done. It has all been, the dominoes have been, to mix the metaphor, have been put in place and set in motion. And so, you might as well just let it go. And the outcome will be what the outcome is. You did your best to get the outcome that you wanted, and maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. And so much of, if you were to strain and worry about it and fret and get mad if the wrong thing happens and all of those things, if you were to do that, that would just waste your energy for the next time you need to bowl, which is in about a second.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like so much about masculinity is learning to manage tensions. And, there's the tension between what you can control and what you can't control. There's the tension between being strong and tender, right? You mentioned your definition of masculinity comes down to, in the book you write about having heart, but also having backbone. There's a tension between those things. And so much of it is just relearning how to manage this tension, identify the tension. If things are all over into an extreme, that's usually the wrong path, and learn to manage that tension. And I think that observation about the stuff you can control versus the stuff you can't control is just another one of those tensions that we have to deal with as men.
Yeah, it comes into everything. Like sexuality was a whole other topic, and you're just
I think
burning
we
with
should have a
desire.
whole other episode on sexuality.
Burning with desire, but it's another human being, and you're finding your way with each other, and so and Alcoholics Anonymous, the whole thing of surrendering to a greater power. And when your kid walks out the door, you said the bowling ball, your teenager walks out the door, and you've done all you can. you know?
Yeah.
They'll
Yeah,
make their
and
own
I think a
choices.
lot of people they do this demonstrative thing where they, like, worry about it and, oh, all of that stuff, but that's just admitting that you didn't actually do the prep work to make sure that the outcome was as likely as possible to be that you wanted to
Mm,
be. So
mm,
your kid is driving out the door and, I don't know, driving to college, and you're gonna worry about it. Of course, you're gonna worry about it, but if you make this like, you shouldn't have to worry about it. Like, before that time happened, you've put in the work already. And when
mm,
the time to worry about it was 5 years ago when you
yeah.
were, setting them on that road. And then when it finally comes time to let the ball go and let it roll, you should be able to feel rest assured in the knowledge that the best possible thing is gonna happen
Mm,
because I put all the energy in on the front end. There's no time, there's no sense in putting energy in after the ball was let go.
hmm.
And it's a little bit it's not quite that cut and dried when it comes to people because we can influence people. You can influence your children after they leave the house, of course,
Mm,
but it should be
yeah,
nudges, right?
yeah, and not and conversation rather than, manipulation,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, Sean, we could go for days. I
We
need to go
can,
have a
and
little.
we'll definitely do more. And this, yeah, and this has been a little bit of a taste of, I think, you know, eh, so, like, as you know, one of the things I love to do at the end of these discussions, is ask for a principle. And last time, the principle was that is another one of those tensions. Tenderness is strength. And would you be up for sharing another principle about manhood this time?
Okay, the thing that was coming out, just as we were talking the last few minutes was presence, and, that it's in the it's today that counts. Yeah,
Mm,
our kids live in the present moment. It's us who thinks about 10 years down the track and next year
yeah,
and so and if we're worried about getting good grades and making a living and things that are off in the future all the time, we will never connect with our kids because they live today. You know, that
that's
little
so
boy of
true.
yours,
Yeah,
he wants to have fun today. And a good childhood is made up of, 9,000 todays. And so when they see dads, when their eyes meet your eyes and they see you're really looking at them and it's a soft-eyed look and you're laughing with them and it's a full-bellied laugh, rolling on the floor laugh. And when you're gently sort of saying, "No, that's too dangerous there, come away from the deep, big waves." Um, and and they feel that, and it's gentle. It's just you're restraining them, but there's no harshness in it. Um, then they feel like Dad is 100% here.
mm,
Um, Now, very few dads did that in the past. They were off somewhere, whether they're off back in the middle of World War II or they're back at the office.
yeah,
Um, and so presence, if you can do presence, um, then your parenting and your partnering will work really, really well.
I
That's
struggle
all you got to worry about. Yeah.
mightily. I struggle mightily with that,
Uh,
and but you gave me one of those moments today, and so I'll tell you the story. Um, so in preparation for this discussion, I've been reading the book, and I was a little bit behind on it. I woke up early this morning, about 5:30 in the morning. I usually wake up around that time, and the kids were still asleep. And there's a chair in their room, and I decided, I got up And I decided, I was reading the book. I was taking notes. I wanted to be well informed for this conversation. And so I went in and I sat in their bedroom, and I sat in the chair in their bedroom. And about, I don't know, 10 or 20 minutes after I sat down reading your book, my boy woke up. And my kids share a room, and they have a bunk bed. My boy sleeps on the top, and he woke up and he poked his little head over, and he saw me, and just wordlessly, he climbed down the ladder from the bunk bed, and he just came over and he sat on my lap and gave me a big hug, and kissed my cheek, and then walked out the door.
Oh,
And
oh,
so that wouldn't happen if I hadn't been scrambling to try and read as much of the new Manhood as I could before this discussion. But I love that principle, that presentness principle. It is, and man, it's something I struggle with, and I need to come up with mechanisms to keep myself. I'm very focused on the future. I'm always like worried about, how
yeah.
am I going to deal with the armies coming over the hill, right? And
Mm,
and by the way, that's an important skill. You need to be able to deal with the armies coming over the hill, but you
mm.
can't deal so much with the armies coming over the hill that you never have a chance to enjoy the fruits of worrying about the armies coming over the hill, which is that you're
Yes.
safe.
Yeah. Well, I really, I'm sort of envious of. I remember those little kids coming to give you a cuddle,
Yeah.
uh, um, uh, 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 and just the amazingness of having little kids who just love to be with you, and so you're at a beautiful time of life, Shaun. So I do
It's for
enjoy
I
it.
yeah, I feel fortunate, and fortunately, and luckily, I get, as part of what I do, I get to have discussions with guys like you who remind me of how fortunate I
Mm,
am
mm,
to experience that, so I can actually recognize, wow, yeah, this is something really nice,
yeah,
and be able to
yeah.
remember it.
Mm.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, we will definitely do more of this. And to everybody listening, if you've traveled with us this far, and if this conversation has stirred something in you regarding your own journey as a man, I highly encourage you to pick up the new Manhood. It is beautifully written. It is. It's more than just a book. It is a. It's a roadmap, and it is a message that is deeply resonant in our situation today. And I just absolutely, pick it up, and man, it's really good. Um, and join us next time on Raising Men as we continue to build a community of masculine excellence. Steve, thanks again. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks to you, Shaun, and love to everyone who's watching and listening. Talk to you another time. Thank you.
And all our listeners, remember, you're a great parent. Raising Men is produced by Phil Hernandez. This episode was edited by Ralph Tolentino.